that one actually would require an amendment.
I'm like, truly, I feel like truly things like, well, it brings me like out of
It's kind of
the
amazing
seat,
how,
like, truly managing to like withdrawal. I like, I have a cancel.
oh, that election, yeah.
So I gave up on the airport.
Well, it's
I was
fine.
like, I can't get out of BCA. I'm gonna get fried. It's in my
Oh,
mouth.
sorry about that.
That's it. And I tried to, I was like, I think it's a little warm yet.
Hello.
I could fly and bring it.
Hey, Daddy.
And then
Thanks, man, I'm just trying to get some caption stuff together.
at Union.
But yeah, I'm glad.
Okay. And after
Okay.
3 planes, 3 trains, 3 days, multiple destinations, multiple airlines. I called my editor and I was like, I'm so sorry to read this letter. Don't think they're gonna let me leave the city.
So again, we got the audience mics here, checking 1, 2, 3, check, check. And then the podium mic, check 1, 2. You got a sound check that you need, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Betty Boda bought some butter, but said she, this butter's bitter. Cool. It slows down the audio. That's weird. I'll let the live desk know that. You said cap 16. Cool.
Is it Clinton hearing is gonna happen?
Well, thanks for letting me know, Carlton, and check as always. Have a good one.
When I saw the news, I was like, oh, this could be the
Cheers.
hearing is like walking up.
Yeah, it might have been some of the cap EA lines.
We're almost having to cutting out, but not really.
No, for some reason it sounded slow motion. Yeah, that must be something on our sound control. But,
That was like a. It's not reliable enough. Like, and then like everything could go wrong between him getting a flight and him actually getting I felt bad too, because trying to be so friendly, but it cost me pilots. Like, when he we're gonna get out of these here. Like, I kept flying like flight attendants and pilots, like, you know more than I do. What is your opinion on the first cancellation stuff? And I talked to one guy, I was like, I think we'll get out tomorrow. He was like, on Tuesday. And I was like, okay, I'm trusting you, this is pilot. And then he was like, he was really nice. I was like, aggressively friendly. But I need to tell me this is
Hey, I'm doing cuts from Manu and Studio A.
I was 40. I think I started to feel so like I'm going to see like a long shot.
They're gonna stay in low price.
Oh, okay,
They're
and then
got a
I was like,
promotion to,
I think any of them.
just the price.
You're forgetting.
Yeah. Whoa, 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 I know. I didn't want to go in that direction, but I tell you what, coming back from the middle of the
No, I'm just an idiot.
No, I was just saying. We were having a trip. why, the less known, the better. Yeah.
Wait, there's like 18 rooms. Like, this is not.
There was our thing with Kentucky and
Like after I said that, like, this is right forever. I can't do that. That's actually.
in every other respect. It's gonna be, the best. The friendly, the efficient,
Probably really in the afternoon, at least. You don't have to like record and do it.
Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, yeah, no, it's, good timing, hopefully. Yep, you know what I'm doing. That's how it be.
No, I think.
Still like sort of getting back in the swing of it. I was incapacitated.
the guy's name in Obama, Paul.
Not fun.
Just careful with the cameras in the back.
I like haven't done any of that in so long. Yeah, you'll be getting, you're gonna start getting my friendly weekly emails again. I have to fill out all this for the West Point Fellowship, and I was on the first one last night, and I was like, oh, I think I need to go. Well. Problem, I was like, there's so few days left, I don't think I want to take them off. So I have, oh yeah, I have to.
I'm not, I did it once. I did it last time, but it was like.
My well-being, I'm like.
Hey. Need that.
Yeah.
Can't do everything. Even though, I mean, last time I did.
I got asked yesterday.
I was trying to ask them, I got physically grabbed.
I think a lot of people forget that.
He's physically grabbed, yeah. So when he's standing close to the wall, yeah. No, there's got my brain. Oh, yeah. Have you seen DVO? Just her last intervention. Come on, I'd be like, yeah.
It wasn't on. Oh, it was.
We were really eager to put him off our driveway and everything, right? I don't know what that is. Why not get that? Unless I know what it is. It's like after their layer of ice came in. This is my, this is the exact. Oh, sure, yeah. That would be weird for me. I grew up in a redneck Arkansas family, so.
What's up?
Hi.
It's been a while since.
Oh, man.
Oh, the shoes.
Oh, thanks. The problem is,
But are they comfortable?
I think once they're broken in, they will be, but like,
Oh, they're new?
they're, I've had them for years, but I just don't wear them because they make a lot of noise.
I feel like when you break them, then they won't make as much noise.
I think it's material that they used on the towel.
Yeah.
All right, walking up to the podium.
Making noise.
Meet the phone here. Checking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. House Studio A, February 3rd, 2026. Speaker Mike Johnson and other Republican leaders. Need me to do more? Betty Boda, bought some butter. Cap 16 is good, sweet. Cap 2, Cap 4. Checking the audio for anyone who needs it. Hello, hello. 2 and 4. Okay. You sure you don't need any more? You good?
I'm gonna sit here and ask questions.
All right. Sounds good.
Sorry, with NBC? Yeah, I'll bet it. You're on NBC, you should see it actually. Okay, that's even better. How are you? What's up? There it is. It's insane. And I have to leave at like 11:45 to get a GW. Because I have like a phone with their law admissions officers. I got this email being like, we're not waitlisting you. Like basically it said, we're putting you on a priority hold. Please fill out a short form saying what, like, why you're interested in GW. 250 characters. Really short. Like, that's 2 sentences. Not exactly. It's weird because what it is really, it's called yield protection, where they don't want students who have, they don't want to accept students who they do not think they're going to attend. So if you have like a higher,
I feel like this whole
somewhere else,
debate about Jasmine Crockett as a Senate candidate is perfect for you.
like
So funny. I was literally texting someone in Texas as I was
because
sitting
they've
here.
already said like, I put a bunch of people on my side, which I was okay.
She's just flaming
She is, but also, there's sort of a question here too of like this trainer economy.
Yes, absolutely.
Like it is trying
Fill out the form. I was like, okay, but I need to go.
doing so much to bring creators in, give them more access than anybody thinking like, oh, it's just someone who's gonna come in and braid my hair and like be nice to me. It's like these people are not bound by
Any of the
record
rules.
agreements that we made.
Yeah, exactly. Like the fact that this was perpetuated by a TikTok with no substantiation, no sources, nobody corroborated, no receipts, nothing. There's just one person hearsay. It's not journalism. And guess what? People are going to miss journalism when they're gone. When it's gone.
Especially when the campaigns just continue like pushing this idea of this is what it is, this is what it should be.
Colin Allred set his campaign on fire.
For the
Like he was already pissing off a lot of people because of how he went up against Billy Johnson. It was funny because I was texting someone in Texas, and she was just like, why did he do this? Hey, sit with us.
Oh, yes,
How you doing? Shit, I forgot your container, but I'll give it to you.
Okay, yeah, no worries, I'm doing extra.
The next one.
That's what you were saying, you were texting someone in Texas.
And they were just like, yeah, Colin did run a bad campaign. But,
Yeah. I mean, also like, this is, the thing that gets me is like, they have this influencer, who comes in, and she's with and like, they don't even, like, it's clear he did say this. Like, at the core of it, like, she's right.
yeah.
Which is its own bag of worms, like.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, you know, I mean, and I've heard from not somebody, you know, Tallarico has Buttigieg problem. Yeah, yeah. But the fact of the matter is that, like you said, like the fact that somebody could just say this without just say stuff is dangerous.
What's the situation over by you with the snow? What's going on?
With the snow.
Yeah, like with the plowing and everything,
The
you guys
plow-
are all good?
The plowing, they finally put a plow through, but it's like, there's still a lot of sleet on the streets. So like, I'm tempted to get a pickaxe and,
People have been, like, I've seen in the neighborhood, people with pickaxes.
yeah, like I'm tempted to get like a pickaxe or a nice pickaxe, like, you know, just like,
Here, I had to get I've got a pickaxe anyway,
okay,
and that's what I finally had to use to get under bucket stuff
I
out.
don't blame you. Yeah, cause it's like, you know, it's embarrassing that that the city and the DMV doesn't prepare for this.
or they do prepare, but they don't. I will say, this was a trickier one, because it was like
agree.
snow and then freeze, but for it to go this long,
Yeah.
yeah. And there was a moment where, like, I do think, interesting to say this to my DC friends, but Virginia did pretty good. Virginia
No,
did
no, I've heard, yeah.
Like, we managed to travel in a way that was like, somehow, like, people could get around.
Yeah, not terrible, yeah. No, I mean, that's, I mean, comparatively, like, I mean, Lamont has done a great job, you know, a lot, you know, other bureaucracies have done a good job. Gonna do another, what do you got for the speaker?
I'm so excited. Sorry, excuse me, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
All right, get your last audio or focus check here. Betty Boda bought some butter, but said she this butter's bitter. If I put it in my batter, it will make my batter bitter. Not Tom Emmer size. 6 foot. So he's what, like 6'4"? He's definitely not 6'7". Good?
Yeah, he's jealous.
Mic check, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I don't know if you win one from last time, especially with the splash. Oh, you get to sit down.
How you liking hosting way too early?
Dude, it's been good. I'm like fully, I was like, how am I? I'm fine. I like, honestly, the schedule was the hardest part. And I feel completely like on the hamster wheel of it right now.
Yeah.
I mean, again, like I go to bed at 7 p.m. Like, I'm not a person, but it works. Like,
It's really the show you're doing on the show.
oh,
No, you're really
that's
good at
so
it.
nice.
You're really good at it.
Thanks. That's really, really nice. I also just like the team that existed well before me and will outlast me as well. Like they are so well oiled at it. I mean, it's the Morning Joe team, and like they just get up, you know, an hour earlier, and like you know, a lot of the stuff is repeated throughout. But like they just run such a tight show that like it's the dream, honestly. And I think it marries so well with coming to this place.
Yes.
And, like, doing the reporting, and then like it feels like I always think of it as like, you know, the arrows that like point to each other in a
Yes.
circle. Like that's kind of how I feel. Like the first half of my day points to the next half of my day, and then the back half of my day points
What's
to
the
the next.
beginning of it? Yeah.
And it feels like it's a really good like synergy.
So yeah, it's a fine thing. It's a good thing. Yeah, except like state of the hours. Only the hours. That show though can only exist at 5 o'clock in the morning because it exists in an hour where nothing can disrupt. I mean, the only day we've ever had to cancel guests the morning of is when the Pope died.
Yes.
Pretty extenuating circumstance. And like, so we never cancel. We are always like, this is planned. We book people who we know can like talk generally if in case something changes overnight. Like if we book a writer strike Venezuela, like we know that person can hopefully maneuver us, right? So, yeah. I don't know. So it really works pretty nicely. I'm proud of what we've been able to do with it. I feel like our social presence has really grown too. So, yeah, all good things. I've been taking on new first day in the snow. I've been saying Mayor Bowser's name every morning after every segment, so that it pops up in her clips.
Yeah, no, I was just grumpy when I did that, but then like everybody was like, everybody was like,
No lies.
you know,
No lies. The city has no idea what they're doing. No lies at all. Say it to my face. Well, I do think we should actually make a steak out today because I have questions for you.
The Sharia thing that we're registered for, is it changed? I could just tell her. Yeah. All right. Okay.
Like that, and then I'll look at the other stuff in between.
Yeah, I'll wait till we're coming up to that. Let her know if you can't.
Never stops. How do you know when to clock in?
Wouldn't it be nice to be paid all the way?
Oh, my golly. Hey, good morning, everybody. Hope you all are staying warm and glad to see everybody. The sidewalks are starting to get de-iced, so that's a bonus, right? But let me comment on today's appropriation vote. No president has been stronger or more consistent on securing the border and removing criminal, illegal aliens from our communities, period. Strongest president ever. I have complete trust in President Trump that he will continue to enforce the rule of law, including each and every one of our immigration laws. So here's what we're going to do this afternoon. One, we're going to pass the legislation to finish funding more than 95% of the federal government at Trump spending levels, not Biden spending levels. And two, on the sliver that remains, we will keep the wheels of progress turning and let the president do what he does best, and that's negotiate a final deal on his signature issue. And I'll tell you what, if anyone can get this deal done that is going to crack down on illegal criminal aliens to protect our community, that's going to be President Donald J. Trump. So, with that covered by our president, House Republicans are remaining focused on Americans' pocketbooks. Tax filing season began last week, and thanks to House Republicans, it's going to be easier than ever for working families to file their taxes. And why, you ask? Because Republicans expanded the standard deduction. To put it in plain English, the first $31,500 a family earns is tax-free. So the first $31,500 of every family, tax-free. And that does something else that's very important. It saves you time. About 210 million hours of paperwork gone. And that's 210 million hours and 210 million hours of time that the Americans people can spend on doing what they want to do, not filing their tax returns, burdensome tax returns. But here's what's really important that's missed. Every single Democrat voted against that $31,500 standard deduction. Every single Democrat voted against saving you time and making tax filing easier. And every single Democrat voted against saving you money. Remember, and I say this every time I'm up here, and one of these times it's going to get covered by y'all. Every single Democrat voted to raise every single American's taxes. I'm going to say it again. Every single Democrat voted to raise your taxes. Please highlight that in your stories. I mean, I would think the Democrats would be proud to raise your taxes. They need to own that. Republicans are saving you time and saving you money. So this week, House Republicans are taking that message directly to the people. All across the country, we're reminding Americans exactly what happened and the impact that it will have on their families. Simply put, Republicans voted to make tax filing easier. Less bureaucracy. That's a good thing. Republicans voted to cut taxes for working families to keep more money in your pockets. Democrats, again, voted against that. Democrats want more bureaucracy, and Democrats want more of your hard-earned tax dollars. Democrats want to raise your taxes. Republicans want to lower costs and keep more money in your pocket, simply put. So now I will turn it over to our whip, who's done an amazing job, Mr. Emmer. You can raise this. Without squeak.
We need some Earl.
Yeah, there's funding for that in the bill.
There. So now I can actually see what I've got. Once again, Republicans are making clear that we are the party of responsible governance. While Hakeem Jeffries foolishly urges his members to hold the American people hostage for the second time in less than 6 months, House Republicans are preparing to vote, as we've already done, to fund the government with individual appropriations bills. We passed these bills once before, and we will pass them again. As promised, Republicans in the House have reclaimed the power of the purse. 11 of 12 America First spending bills have passed through both the House and Senate, and now we're going to finish the job. That's what governing actually looks like. The American people deserve a functioning government, and House Republicans will deliver. Just like the Democrat government shutdown in October, Hakeem Jeffries and far-left Democrats want a political show. What's their angle this time? Obstructing President Trump's successful law and order agenda. Thankfully, Republicans thought ahead. In response to the devastating Biden border crisis, we proactively funded immigration and customs enforcement operations for the next 4 years in the One Big Beautiful Bill. The Democrats' attempts to stifle immigration enforcement and protect dangerous criminals, especially in my state, will prove to do nothing more than hurt law-abiding Americans. Some in their party actually know this, and we hope they will do the right thing. But even if not, law and order and responsible governance will prevail thanks to Republican leadership and despite obstructionist best efforts. We must get this government funding bills to President Trump's desk swiftly for the good of the American people. And with that, I turn it over to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. Well, look at that.
Is that a bird?
Whoa, it's like autopilot here. We've got a runaway podium. The Democrats have tried to shut this thing down, too. Once again, today, Republicans will reopen the government after Democrats shut it down. It's like we've seen this movie before, just a few weeks ago, that Democrats shut the government down for a record amount of time. And it took President Trump working with Republicans to finally get it reopened. And we're going to do that again today. And as the whip said, if some Democrats want to join us, we welcome them. But you've seen their leaders, like Hakeem Jeffries, say they want to keep the government shut down. And you'd ask why. Well, it's surely not over ICE, because we've already funded ICE in the One Big Beautiful Bill. But what does a no vote mean today? If Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries vote no today, they're voting against a 3.8% pay raise for our troops. That's in this package. What they're saying is they don't want our troops to even get paid, let alone get a pay raise. Because as it stands today, troops will not get their next paycheck if Hakeem Jeffries and Democrat leaders get their way. TSA agents who keep our airports operating so people can go see relatives flying around the country, that will shut down if Democrats vote no. FEMA is right now giving aid to a lot of states that have had massive damage from freezes. Democrats voting no shuts that down. And so Republicans will be the responsible party once again to keep the government open, to reopen this government and focus on the priorities that the voters elected Donald Trump and House and Senate Republicans to go implement. We will keep doing that work, even with a razor-thin margin. And I know, yes, sometimes the odds look lower than the Patriots winning the Super Bowl, but that's okay because we are here to do a job, and we're going to do that job. And whoever wants to join us on the Democrat side is free to. And look, we've been able to deliver a lot of bipartisan wins on a number of areas. If you look at holding people accountable, Chairman Comer is right now in the middle of a negotiation with the Clintons. Bill and Hillary Clinton were subpoenaed on a unanimous vote, Republicans and Democrats voting unanimously, which almost never happens in the Oversight Committee, and it did, to say they have to come forward and testify over the Epstein files. And they have been refusing and refusing for months, and finally at the midnight hour, when a contempt resolution is sitting over their heads, did they finally start talking, but they are not in full compliance. They have until noon today to fully comply. Otherwise, we will move contempt tomorrow against the Clintons. And again, that was a bipartisan vote out of committee to say that nobody's above the law. The Clintons have to comply with the subpoena like everybody else. I think it was Jamie Raskin who said, when you're subpoenaed by Congress, you have to show up. We'll see how he votes on that tomorrow if the Clintons fail to comply. But we're going to keep doing our job. We're also bringing an important bill on critical minerals to the floor to open up the vast resources of this country that have been shut down by the previous administration so that we don't have to be reliant on countries like China for the critical minerals that run so many of the products we use every single day. This Republican majority is going to keep delivering for the American people while we meet the basic obligations of government, like keeping the government open and reopening the government, which we'll do today. The man at the head of that effort is our great speaker, Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Steve. Well, all right, it's not on autopilot anymore.
You love doing that.
I do. Makes you feel taller. So grateful to be with you all, and I'm sorry we're in this situation again. It's like Groundhog Day in a way, the movie, the bad movie, where we come back to the same failed measures of the Democrats. It was just less than 3 months ago that they shut the government down for the longest period in history, 43 days. It was painful for so many Americans. Finally, a handful of them saw the light and helped us get the government operating again. Republicans have demonstrated over and over that we are the grown-ups in the room. We are the ones that are governing. We are the ones that are funding the government. We are the ones that are providing the vital services and trying to make government work more efficiently and effectively for everyone. After that long historic shutdown that was so painful, appropriators in both parties got together. I tip my hat to Chairman Tom Cole of the House Republican chair of the Appropriations Committee and all of our committee members, the Cardinals, the subcommittee chairs as we call them. all worked so well in their areas, and we got 12 separate appropriations bills passed through the House, and we had a triumphant press conference announcing that. We expected it to be on a glide path through the Senate, but of course the Democrats could not miss an opportunity to try to shut the government down again. That's what they're doing. Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats play games with government funding. Now, listen, the president obviously has reached out to state and local officials in the state of Minnesota. The events there have been tragic and unnecessary. He's made clear his desire to de-escalate the situation and to support an honest investigation of what's occurred there. We now have Tom Homan in charge of operations there, and he's an extraordinary leader. He has 40 years experience. He's highly decorated, has worked in Democrat and Republican administrations, and knows what he's doing. And there's more order being brought to the chaos. Now, I want to hasten to say that the chaos is because, in large measure, the local and state officials in Minnesota have not been participating with federal law enforcement operations, and they've created a dangerous situation there, and that is really a big part of the problem here. The White House and the Senate continued in good faith. They've agreed to separate the Homeland Security funding bill, and that's fine. So we have 2 weeks now to negotiate in good faith on both sides. The White House and Senate Democrats are going to engage in that, but the House Republicans are as well. We have to make sure we maintain the important parameters here. We can't go down the road of amnesty. You can't, in any way, lighten the enforcement requirement of federal immigration law. That's what the American people demand and deserve. We want dangerous illegal criminals to be sent out of the country, and they've been very successful at that. But these negotiations are going to go forward. If the Democrats do insist on keeping the government shut down, their pointless obstruction is going to have no effect on border security, which we have done, we've secured, or immigration enforcement. As has been noted by the leaders here this morning, we did fund ICE operations for a few years now. So what they'll be shutting down, don't lose this, what they'll be shutting down is FEMA operations as we're cleaning up from the winter storms. They'll be shutting down TSA, which is obviously necessary to keep the country moving through our airports. Coast Guard operations. I mean, so many important functions in the Department of Homeland Security is what will be adversely affected by these partisan games. Let's hope and pray that they don't do that. Let's hope that over the next 2 weeks we can negotiate and get this done. They say they want a real negotiation with President Trump and Republicans over immigration enforcement policy, and we are happy to have that debate. And I've said in a gaggle earlier this morning that what must be a part of that discussion is the participation of blue cities in federal immigration enforcement. You can't go to a sanctuary city and pretend like the law doesn't apply there. It does. And so we're going to be working through all that. Our chairwoman McClain talked about tax filing made easy. Last week marked the beginning of tax season, and millions of American families are working through that right now, and they're recognizing the amount of time and money spent complying with the federal tax code is going to be significantly reduced this year because of great Republican policy. Some of the things we did in the Working Families Tax Cuts, the big, beautiful bill, obviously we intended to cut taxes and to advance America First pro-growth policies, but we also sought to reduce the tax burden on Americans because we know that reforming the tax system isn't just about reducing rates, it's also about reducing the paperwork and the compliance burden on Americans. And you heard these stats, I'll repeat them, but our Working Families Tax Cut locked in the doubled standard deduction. It boosted it further to $31,500 for American families. That's a lot of money to hardworking folks. And again, we remind you Democrats voted against all of those great reforms. These successful reforms are going to save Americans 210 million hours per year in paperwork and $13 billion in compliance costs. That's real money to real people, and we're proud of that. Nobody likes paying taxes, okay? But Republicans have reduced the amount you owe and made your returns significantly easier to file. And so we're so grateful everyone's going to be able to take advantage of that. Last thing I just want to mention, and we'll take questions. I don't think the American people need any more evidence. The Democrats want to tax the American people to death. Just check Congress.gov. You can see all the bills they filed. But if they did, they should look no further than the Democrat-run D.C. Council's decision, listen to this, to decouple the local tax code from specific federal tax provisions. So in layman's terms, what they're trying to do here Any Democrat-run city is going to lead into this kind of nonsense. But they're preventing D.C. residents from experiencing the full benefits of the Working Families Tax Cuts bill. It's almost unimaginable that they would inflict that pain upon their own constituents, but that's what they're doing. D.C. is not alone in this obstruction. You've got strongholds, Democrat strongholds like New York and Colorado and Illinois, cities there, preventing their residents from enjoying these benefits. There's no way to spin it. Blue state governors intentionally harming their own residents just because the policies were offered by a Republican administration. I mean, that's what's happening. And it's just incredible to us. Is there any stronger evidence that Republicans are the party of affordability? Democrats say one thing and they do completely the opposite. And I'm so sad for you if you live in one of those jurisdictions. It's a real problem. If this act were to become local law, D.C. residents would be prevented from claiming no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, the increased standard deduction, and so much more. And it's just wrong. There's an estimated 17,000 tipped workers here in the nation's capital, and the D.C. City Council is attempting to prevent them from enjoying this historic tax benefit. But House Republicans are going to work to fix it this week. We will advance Representative Gill's legislation to disapprove of that nonsense at the D.C. Council, because every American deserves to enjoy the benefits of the Republicans' historic tax cuts, even if you live in a Democrat stronghold. Take a couple questions. Yes. Bill, go ahead.
Thank you, Speaker Johnson. Are you confident you have the votes for this rule book to pass, and do you expect any Republican no votes at all?
I don't, and this may be hard for some of y'all to believe, but I never doubted this. This was not my preferred route. I wanted to keep all 6 bills together. We worked so hard to pass them through the House, and I thought that should have been a package that sailed through the Senate, got to the President's desk, so we can fund government responsibly. We're spending less money year over year, and we're returning regular order around here, and that's a commitment I made when I became Speaker, and we're finally getting it done. But listen, the President agreed with Schumer that they would separate Homeland, and we'll do that, and we'll handle it. We're going to pass the rule today. It was never in doubt to me. The Republicans are going to do the responsible thing. I did talk to Hakeem Jeffries over the weekend, and he informed me that they would not be assisting in this endeavor, and I just think that's crazy. I mean, I just think that everybody needs to look at what's happening here. One party is moving forward, by the way, with the smallest margin in U.S. history. We have a 1-vote margin. We are still sticking together. The Republican Party is sticking together because the stakes are so high. We're governing responsibly, and we're getting the job done. And Democrats, all they do every single day here is obstruct. And you can see the record for itself. They shut the government down for 43 days, the longest in history, just last fall, and they want to do it again. And it's just crazy. And I think the American people are going to think about this hard when they go to the voting box and to the ballot box in the fall, and we decide who keeps the majority in Congress. I think they're going to give it to the grown-ups. I think the Republicans will be able to continue and grow our majority to keep governing. Otherwise, what Democrats will give you is chaos, shutdowns. They'll shut down the federal government. They keep proving it to you over and over. So take them at their word. Jake.
Mr. Speaker.
Explain this. So Jeffries told you he wasn't going to help with this. Did Schumer represent something different to you in your conversations with the president? Because it seems that there's a disconnect here that's hard to square.
It is hard to square, and it's not my place to get involved in their family squabble. But I mean, I think Hakeem has made very clear I think he was upset, offended that Chuck Schumer presumed to speak for House Democrats. So you'll have to figure that out. The Democrats are in a family squabble over there, and it's not of our doing. Hold on, wait a minute. Schumer and Jeffries are from the same state. They're in the same delegation, and they seem to be having a little power struggle between the two of them. So look, I'm not trying to fuel that. You asked me the question. I don't know what's going on, but I can tell you the Republicans are united, and I'm proud of that. And this is the party that is getting the job done.
Mr. Speaker. You're a constitutional lawyer. Can you detail the Fourth Amendment protections and rights someone has if an ICE agent approaches their home with an administrative warrant?
Yeah, right. Let me say this. Okay, so when ICE goes to execute a warrant, it's an administrative warrant, and it's issued by an immigration judge, and that is a sufficient legal authority to go and apprehend someone. They have violated the law. They crossed over our border illegally, and they're here and without any right to be here. Okay. That's what's happening. Now, the controversy has erupted where if someone is, they're going to be apprehended and they run behind a closed door and lock the door, I mean, what is ICE supposed to do? What is Immigration Customs Enforcement supposed to do at that point? Oh, gee whiz, they locked the door. I mean, I guess we'll just go on to our, so there's some logic and reason that is to be applied here. Some have complained that the force has been excessive or what have you. I don't know. We're going to figure that out as part of the discussion over the next couple of weeks. I tell you what the Democrats want to do and what we cannot do, and that is they want to add an entirely new layer of warrant requirement. Okay, they want to have a judicial warrant on top of the immigration judge warrant, and we can't do that. Just think of it logically. Okay, you've got maybe 20 million illegals who came across the border just in the last 4 years, when the Biden-Harris administration opened the border wide. Okay, imagine if we had to go through the process of getting a judicial warrant, an additional warrant, to go and apprehend people who we know are here illegally. How much time would that take? We don't have enough judges. We don't have enough time. It would take decades probably to do that. The people who are advocating for that don't want any immigration enforcement. They do not want anybody to be sent out of the country who's here illegally, and that is blatantly what their cause is. So we've got to apply reason. We do have to apply the Constitution. We have to respect it. And those parameters need to be determined. But I can tell you that we are never going to go along with adding an entirely new layer of judicial warrants because it is unimplementable. It cannot be done, and it should not be done, and it's not necessary.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning. In 2023, I remember this, you chaired a hearing after the FBI had that raid on Mark Hub, the pro-life father.
Yep.
And that was something that I think to this day Republicans say was a problem in the use of force by this government.
Yeah.
And my question now is, obviously we understand ICE's legitimate purpose, but we've seen guns drawn on Americans who have not necessarily protesters. We've seen people pulled out of their houses, to your point about the warrants. Do you think ICE needs to change, and CBP, any of their tactics, given what your concerns about civil liberties from the past?
I have great faith and trust in the leadership of Homeland Security and Tom Homan in particular, who's now in charge in Minnesota. He brings 40 years' experience to this. He's very measured. We all believe that immigration policy ought to be balanced and strategic and smart, and it obviously needs to comply with the law. And I'm going to leave it to the experts to determine what that is. I think in the negotiation, I think we've got to remove the politics. We've got to look at what the Constitution says, what federal immigration law says, and if anybody wants to adjust immigration law, then that's why we're here in the legislative branch. But we need it. We need that approach. We need the temperature turned down. That's the president's words. And you need a steady hand at the wheel. I think.
Do you have any
Mr.
concerns?
Mr. Speaker,
Yeah, I just want to circle back on the judicial warrant situation. Can you just explain to me why we're talking about adding additional requirements? Adding a judicial warrant is adding an additional requirement to this process. I mean, immigration advocacy groups for years have said, don't open the door for immigration agents without a signed warrant from a judge. ICE's own field manual says entering a home without a warrant is typically a violation of the Fourth Amendment. How is this raising requirement? Isn't this the MO for how things normally work?
No, I mean, look, the question is to the Democrats who are ringing the bells and saying that they're trying to make this one of their demands in this negotiation. That's what I'm told. Some of them have. And I'm saying that is a road that we cannot and should not go down. And to your point, ICE, for many years, obviously, has had in the manuals that you follow the Fourth Amendment restrictions and you do this in a meaningful and thoughtful way. But we have an unprecedented level of opposition and pushback. When you have local and state officials informing their citizens that they should impede the immigration, customs, and enforcement operations, it creates a dangerous situation, and that's what's led to all of this chaos. If the governors and the mayors in the blue cities and states would participate with federal law enforcement, we wouldn't even be having these conversations. I mean, you would have a much smoother process, I think. So, look, we're going to have all these discussions over the next couple of weeks. We will figure out a path through this, but we have to enforce our immigration law. The American people made that the #1 issue in the last election. The wide open border and the chaos that ensued because of it was the #1 issue. The president got to work. We used the existing law that was on the books, as we always said, as I said, for 4 years under the Biden administration could have happened, and we closed the border tight in just a couple of months. We've had almost zero illegals released into the country since President Trump took over. Strong leadership. And the next commitment was, as we said to the American people, we will get the dangerous criminal illegals out of the country. And that's what they've been doing. And for anybody to impede that, they are impeding the will of the American people. They are creating a more dangerous situation on our streets, and it has to stop. So stay tuned for the rest of this. We'll get into the details of it. I'm just telling you that adding a whole new layer of judicial warrant requirements is an unworkable proposal, and I think the people who are making that suggestion understand that. I don't think they want anyone to be apprehended and sent out of the country. So we have
Mr.
to-
Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
Is there a question about elections? Happy belated birthday, Mr. Speaker.
Happy belated birthday.
Controversial take on Groundhog Day. Also, that movie was good. That movie is good. That's what I'm saying. Why are you not like Groundhog Day? Don't you need voters? Why are you like pushing back on the Groundhog Day voters? John Cusack, dude, you need those guys. I agree.
I said when they
I
approach.
agree. The Bill Murray voter. Controversial. Thank you for holding the line, Lisa. That's right. I almost raised it in a question, but I was like.
I could literally, I'm like talk to him for an hour. I literally could.
One of the buttons is sticking.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
I thought maybe there was like a
Look at
legit
the
auto
that guy
button.
is. Yeah, thank you. I think maybe he's like the last word. That's nice. I never asked him nice questions.
Yep.
Doesn't hit me.
Evidence of stolen elections and people voting illegally, demanding that states turn over voter rolls to the Department of Justice, which is his own attack dog, threatening to use the Insurrection Act against states he doesn't like. Now, we know why Donald Trump is doing this. He's losing support of the American people, and he knows it, so he doesn't want them to vote. He doesn't want them to have power. The American people are sending his candidates packing at the polls in state after state, most recently in Texas. They're losing elections by dramatic amounts because the people are repudiating Donald Trump. What's his answer? To try and lower people's costs, to try and reduce the chaos in our cities? Oh, no. Take away people's right to vote. Let Donald Trump and his MAGA goons run the election. Democracy, the roots of which tunnel deep into the soil of this great country, has turned against Donald Trump in a truly profound way. We haven't seen anything quite like this, the dramatic drops in the president's popularity and poll numbers. So, of course, what's his answer? What's Trump's answer? Undo democracy itself. That's the oldest trick in the book of dictators. Just say the elections are fake, say certain people's votes don't count. Your side should control the elections for some made-up reason or another. Well, we've seen this again and again in countries around the world, but never in the United States of America until now. And that's what makes Donald Trump's agenda such a danger to the grand American tradition of democracy, because it's only about him and the power he can grab. He doesn't have a single democratic fiber in his being. It's all about Donald Trump, his ego, his power, his self-aggrandizement. That's it. Democracy doesn't matter. The American people don't matter. I ask my Republican colleagues, when the hell will you find your voice when he says that we should nationalize the elections and Republicans should take over and you don't make a peep? What's going on here? You're just so afraid? This is the path that has ruined many a democracy. Now, our democracy is deep and strong, but it requires and allows resistance to these things, verbal resistance, electoral resistance. Where are you? When are our Republican colleagues going to speak against such brutish autocratic drivel from Trump. His drive to autocracy is so obvious that any sixth grade social studies student would recognize what Donald Trump is doing and tell you it's totally against what America's all about. And Republicans, if they think they're going to get the crumbs from Donald Trump's table when he gets his way, they're sadly mistaken. Donald Trump's autocratic instincts will consume everyone, Democrats and Republicans alike. Republicans must reject Trump's call to nationalize elections. The very pillars of our grand democracy, our grand national experiment, democracy, must prevail over the cult of arrogant, autocratic, egotistical personality. Now on ICE. Yesterday, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, who for some reason still has a job, she should have been fired long ago, announced that all federal immigration agents in Minneapolis are going to begin wearing body cameras. I want to be very clear about something. Kristi Noem does not get participation points by saying agents are going to start doing something they should have done all along. Why just Minneapolis? This policy, which is the right policy, should be nationwide. There's no reason to delay that. Most importantly, executive actions alone will never be enough for the American people. We need to pass legislation. We know how whimsical Donald Trump is. He'll say one thing one day and retract it the next. Same with Secretary Noem. So we don't trust some executive order, some pronouncement from some cabinet secretary. We need it enshrined into law. And what Democrats want is exceedingly common sense. We need to end the roving patrols. This means we need arrest warrants and an end to racial profiling. Second, we need accountability. ICE needs to abide by the same rules as local police, including embedded investigations, and there has to be real accountability forcing them to do so when they don't. And third, masks need to come off and cameras need to stay on. Every police officer, every ICE officer should do what every police officer, or just about every police officer in America does, have an ID. Every citizen knows when they meet a police officer, a sheriff, their ID is clear on them. That's always been the accountability that we've had for decades and decades. And Noem thinks, and some people think, like Speaker Johnson thinks, we shouldn't do it. Why is Johnson pro-secret police? It's absurd for the Speaker and others like him to argue that masked ICE agents should get special treatment and be held to a different standard from just about every law enforcement agency in the country. Sheriffs, local police, traffic cops, you don't see them with masks, do you? No. Defending ICE agents wearing masks and giving them special treatment, especially when they're so brutal and thuggy, is totally against the views of most Americans who want basic accountability. Anyone defending ICE agents keeping their masks on is not seriously trying to solve this huge problem of chaos we have seen in Minneapolis and so many of our other cities when ICE is sent in there. And it begs the question, why are some Republicans speaking so loudly, trying to defend masked secret police? Is it that these new ICE hires weren't qualified as police officers at other departments? Could it be that some of them were kicked out of police departments? And then they signed up to snatch people off the streets and beat protesters up with impunity? Because that's what they wanted to do? The American people have a right to know, and the first step is identifying who they are. And finally, I want to make one other very important point. Since the death of Alex Preddy and Renee Good, nothing meaningful has changed about ICE's abuses. Nothing meaningful has changed about ICE's abuses, even since the deaths of Preddy and Good. Last week in Portland, Oregon, federal agents fired tear gas at a crowd of demonstrators that included children. There's a video circulating online of an agent Colorado stealing a woman's phone. When she tried to get it back, the agent shoved her to the ground, yanked her by the hair, and then battered her. If you saw that video, it turned your stomach. And Greg Bovino, the disgraced chief thug, former head of the Border Patrol, is seen in another video trying to motivate agents by saying, quote, this is what Bovino said, arrest as many people who touch you as you want. Those are the general orders way from the top. This is absolutely not what the American people signed up for. Republicans in Congress need to see the chaos and realize it's finally time for ICE to be reined in. Yield the floor.
Republican Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to waive the mandatory quorum call with respect to the Ganji nomination.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we're at a point where America faces a critical choice about our nation's security. As I was saying, Mr. President, we are at a point where our nation is facing a critical choice about our nation's security. And the debate isn't complicated. Republicans are fighting to keep Americans safe. And to do that, we need to enforce the law. And we need to keep our borders secure. The Democrats, and we just heard it from the minority leader, they're fighting to weaken law enforcement. They want to reward illegal immigrants for their illegal behavior. Right now, criminals who are here in this country.
It is a warning about the present and the future. This isn't just about dusty old papers in archives. This is about money in banks. You may ask, why does this matter now? We are living in a dangerous period. As you know, anti-Semitism is rising at levels not seen in generations. Since the atrocities of October 7th, we have witnessed a surge in hatred and denial. We see every day how moral clarity erodes when truth becomes negotiable. This investigation into Credit Suisse underscores a critical lesson. Genocide is not only an ideological crime, it is an economic
for its enforcement operation. Instead, just last week, ICE directed its officers to conduct more arrests without any warrants at all. DHS law enforcement officers must clearly be identifiable and prohibited from hiding behind masks. Racial profiling in immigration enforcement must stop. Sensitive locations like schools, daycare, hospitals, and churches must be protected. We must rein in the sweeping surveillance system DHS is using to crack down on Americans. CBP personnel must also go back to the border. The federal government must cooperate with state and local investigators in investigations, including the murders of Renee Good and Alex Prady. I've been an elected official, Mr. Speaker, like you have, in the state of Mississippi. Never have I seen an opportunity where federal, state, and local law enforcement didn't cooperate together on finding criminals. ICE has taken this to another level, and we're a better country than this. And, Mr. Speaker, Kristi Noem must go. She has endangered the security of the United States, its people, and our institution of government. Again, vote no on the rule and the underlying bill so we can hold the Trump administration accountable. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Georgia.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's important to remember that we stand in the midst of the second government shutdown. And I just have a question for the gentlemen from Massachusetts and Mississippi. Because we are in a shutdown today, and this vote is a vote that will help us end this shutdown later this afternoon, I'm curious, for how long are you prepared to block our military members from receiving not just their salary, but also the hard-earned pay raise? For how long are you willing to withhold the dues that are owed to the people that protect us? And I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I thought the gentleman was asking me a question, but we would have a conversation. I will tell you, we don't want to shut down. We want you to reel in an out-of-control ICE agency that are killing American citizens right before our very eyes. That's what we want. And I don't understand for the life of me why that's such a heavy lift for my Republican friends. But that's what we're asking for. We don't want to shut the government down. We don't, that's not who we are. By the way, again, Republicans are responsible for the last shutdown. You went on vacation rather than stay in Washington to try to negotiate a deal. But here we are. All we're asking for is let's reel in this out-of-control agents. Find that too difficult to comprehend. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Frankel.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. I support the 5 bills that received bipartisan support, but I cannot vote for a package that includes funding for the Department of Homeland Security without immediate action to stop the ongoing violation of human rights and law by ICE that have turned into thugs and has turned our country, America, into a place that many of us don't recognize. Donald Trump promised to take violent criminals off the street, but instead, his immigration enforcement has become a campaign of cruelty against peaceful people, tearing families apart, hollowing out businesses, and paralyzing neighborhoods with pepper spray and fear. And the crisis is national in scope, not just the headlines of the cold-blooded murders in Minnesota. The Department of Homeland Security has detained hundreds of thousands of decent people this year, often in unspeakable conditions and without a fair process. And that includes over 10,000 people in my home state of Florida. A mother nursing her baby torn away from her child. Largely good, decent mothers and fathers, workers who contribute to our communities. And we do need to take the time for bipartisan immigration reform. But today, we must rein in ICE. And that includes ending mass enforcement, roving patrols, requiring judicial warrants, mandating body cameras, ending total immunity, and repurposing the billions of dollars that are being used to menace our communities. Security does not require brutality. Enforcement does not require lawlessness. And our immigration policy should reflect our values, not force us to abandon them. We can secure our borders without terrorizing our neighbors, and I will not support funding that enables cruelty. Congress must act now. Impeach Kristi Noem and rein in ICE. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman reserves.
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, I think it's important to note the reason why we're here today is because Senate Democrats, along with some Senate Republicans, advanced legislation that enables us to fund the government. So I do find it interesting that our colleagues in the House here are so adamantly opposed to funding our government when 20 of their colleagues in the Senate, in their own party, not only support giving our troops a pay raise, but support paying and funding our government as it rightfully should be because of all the wins that President Trump has accomplished thus far. But I am curious, Mr. Speaker, with respect to this vote today, I hear over and over again commentary on ICE and operations therein. But again, no one has addressed the fact that today we are voting to pay our service members. It's a very simple vote. You can either vote yes to pay them or no to withhold payment and funds to them. And I'm just waiting for somebody to answer why that seems to be a bargaining chip that some of our colleagues on the Democrat side of the aisle continue to deploy at the expense of our service members. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yeah, I would just say to the gentleman, unfortunately, under the Republican rule, We don't have regular order anymore. We should be debating appropriation bills one at a time. They bunch everything together. And by the way, not only do they bunch things together, they don't even call for amendments anymore. This is the most closed Congress in history. This is the Rules Committee, and this House of Representatives has become a place where democracy goes to die. My friend should be ashamed of what they are doing to this institution. I now yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Fletcher.
Gentlewoman is recognized from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, in the nearly 2 weeks since the House last met, people across America witnessed the execution of another American citizen, Alex Preddy, by agents of the United States government, Border Patrol agents operating far from the border in Minneapolis. People across the country watched in horror as federal agents executed him and then immediately tried to assassinate his character, lying about who he is and what he was doing. The American people see through these lies, just as they see that this administration is taking actions every single day against its own people that are unconstitutional, un-American, and unconscionable. Everywhere, people are talking about it. In our House Democratic Caucus, we're talking about what we can do about it. The only place that we're not talking about it is here, in this chamber, on the floor of the United States House of Representatives. As Mr. McGovern just noted, once again, the Republicans that control what comes to the floor blocked any amendments to the bill, stopping not just the policy proposed, but the policy debate about the potential solutions and the problems that they address altogether. And now they say we'll address them in 2 weeks. Mr. Speaker, we don't need 2 weeks. We don't have 2 weeks. When Americans are being killed, detained, harassed, and silenced by their government, there should be no higher priority for the U.S. House of Representatives than for the entire Congress than protecting the people that we represent and protecting the Constitution that gives us all of our rights. It is being violated daily by this administration and by officials who have sworn an oath to protect it, just as we have as members of Congress. But we are not doing that here today, and that's why I'm voting no on this rule and urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. Gentleman from Georgia.
Well, Mr. Speaker, our Democrat colleagues have tried to distract from the historic achievements reached in 2025 by mischaracterizing the work of the House Committee on Rules with weaponized statistics taken out of context. I would like to remind my colleagues that barely over a third, or 37%, of rules this Congress have been closed at the discretion of the Committee on Rules, meaning for the vast majority of closed rules, there were not any amendments that could even be made in order. My friends all across the aisle, particularly my friend from Massachusetts, all too well knows the often Herculean tasks required of the Rules Committee and the difficult discussions when deliberating amendment decisions. The Rules majority believes in meaningful lawmaking, not partisan messaging exercises. We do not need to come up with partisan messaging amendments at the last minute in order to scare, or rather score, political points or manufacture floor fights, but instead focus on advancing thoughtful, substantive legislation like the measures before us today through a fair and transparent process. And I also want to note, as I understand it, under my Democrat colleagues' stewardship of the Committee on Rules, he mentions abolishing tradition or what have you. Well, I think it's helpful to note, Mr. Speaker, that under his leadership of the Committee on Rules, they abolished the centuries-old tradition of the motion to recommit with instructions. I think we would all benefit from an explanation of abolishing that centuries-old tradition and a right of the minority. I reserve, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, a lot of words to justify the most closed Congress in history. 83% of the rules have been closed. 8 out of 10. You don't even call for amendments anymore. And people know that it's a waste of time to come to the Rules Committee because you already tipped them off. There are going to be no amendments in order. And 90% of Democratic amendments have been rejected. And a big chunk of Republican amendments have been rejected. I'm sorry that your rank and file are such cheap dates when it comes to legislating, but they cave all the time and they vote for these crappy rules that are totally closed. So that's a bunch of bullshit. Let's be honest. That's what we're talking about here. That is just that's not an accurate assessment of what is going on here. I mean, this is the most closed Congress in history. You should be ashamed. I reserve.
I want to remind members about using profanity during debate. Gentleman's recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. First and foremost, I think when your arguments are hollow, that's when you revert to foul language, and I think that's evident as we've seen today. But again, I asked the question, Mr. Speaker, to the American people, and I hope that they demand an answer. Under the gentleman from Massachusetts stewardship of the Committee on Rules, they abolished a centuries-old tradition during the 117th Congress. I think we would all welcome, we are debating, in fact, procedure today. I think we would all welcome an explanation of that horrific abolishment of committee procedure. I reserve.
Reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Yeah, and Mr. Speaker, I just want to remind my Republican friends who just kind of go along to get along. I mean, Mr. Arrington, who's a chairman, 71% of his amendments have been blocked. I mean, I could write down the list. Congresswoman Mace, 76% of her amendments have been. Stubbe, 79% have been blocked. I go right down the list. These are all Republicans who just routinely get blocked. So, I mean, enough. This is a ridiculous argument. The bottom line is a lot of words to justify the most closed Congress in history, and I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Georgia.
We reserve.
Gentleman reserves.
May I ask the gentleman how many more speakers he has on his side? Hold on. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from New Mexico, Ms. Ledger.
Gentlelady from New Mexico, got 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to speak up against Kristi Noem's Department of Homeland Security. And speaking up is what we must do when we see that the Constitution is violated and the moral fabric of our nation is brutalized the same way they are brutalizing our communities and killing our citizens. Whether it's in New Mexico or Minnesota, fear has become a policy for ICE and CBP, and cruelty has become their strategy as they take money that is taxpayer money that could be used for affordable housing, for health care, for bringing down the cost of living, and they are spending it to terrorize our community. Following the Constitution, respecting the First, Fourth, and 14th Amendment should not be optional. It should never be up for a negotiation. We should make it a requirement and make sure that they do not have immunity, because then they act with impunity. And we should not give another penny to the Department of Homeland Security until we get accountability. And with that, I urge that we vote against this rule, and I yield back.
Massachusetts.
I reserve.
You reserve?
We're
Gentleman from Georgia.
We're prepared to close.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I yield myself the remaining time, Mr. Speaker.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, listening to the debate by my Republican colleagues, I know Republicans want to pretend like they're not in control because that absolves them of responsibility and accountability. They don't want to own their own record because they know their record sucks. They want to pretend like they're not in control because then they'll be because if they pretend like they're in control, if they acknowledge that they're in control, then they'll be held accountable in November. Now look what they've promised and compare it to what they've done so far. Tax breaks for billionaires. They make sure their big donors are taken care of while they screw over regular people. $40 billion to Argentina, hurting our farmers and ranchers, importing more beef from South America, bombing Venezuela, threatening to invade NATO allies. Meanwhile, prices are not down. Prices are up because of their stupid tariffs and lousy economic policies. They promised to release all the Epstein files. They still haven't done that. In fact, they're covering up for the President of the United States. And people are struggling more than ever because Trump's economy sucks. They are making it easier for the elites, easier for the billionaires, easier for the Epstein class, and harder for everybody else. Maybe that's why even Republicans are finally acknowledging MAGA was all a lie. Of course, their members only acknowledge that after they leave. But let's listen to Trump's former top ally, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And here's what she said, and I quote, "I think people are realizing it was all a lie. It was a big lie for the people. What MAGA is really serving in this administration, who they're serving is their big donors, end quote. Look at who Republicans have helped. They have been in charge for a year. They've helped big oil. They've helped big banks. They've helped big tech. Look who was in the front row at Trump's inauguration. Billionaires. That's all he cares about. And look at their promises to go after, quote, the worst of the worst when it comes to immigration. Another broken promise. Stephen Miller and Kristi Noem are not going after the worst of the worst. They're going after kids, VA nurses. They're deporting veterans, for God's sake. And so we are sick and tired of the broken promises and the lies. Enough. I talk to Republican colleagues all the time who privately confess to me that this is a disaster. And then they come on the floor and then they talk to the press and say everything is beautiful. That's just not reality. This president and this administration is taking this country in the wrong direction. We have people that are being murdered in our streets by U.S. federal agents. When is enough going to be enough? I mean, I can't believe this. Go along to get along. I get it. Everybody over there is afraid of the guy in the White House. But maybe you should be more afraid of your constituents. Maybe you ought to listen to your constituents because they're sick and tired of this BS. They've had it. They want Congress to be a body that fights for them, that fights to improve the quality of life for average people. They want this body to be a place where we debate important issues passionately and we skip all the crazy. We can do so much better. We can do so much better. But it requires, my friends on the other side of the aisle, to kind of grow a spine, to stand up and to say and do the right thing. This is nuts what's happening. People being murdered in our streets, federal agents crashing into people's homes without a judicial warrant, former off-duty police officers being detained by ICE. I mean, you know, people with brown and black skin being detained routinely by ICE. This has to stop. And Mr. Speaker, I urge all my colleagues to vote no on this rule. Let's get to the negotiating table. Let's do something to reel in this out of control agency. But going along to get along is no longer an option. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd first say that screaming doesn't make up for substance. But in closing, the rule I presented today, House Resolution 1032, enables the House of Representatives to carry out its responsibilities and to govern in an orderly and fair manner for the American people. And as a reminder, a yes vote on this rule enables us to consider legislation that ends the Democrats' second government shutdown and ensures that our government remains fully open. It ensures that our soldiers, our sailors, our Marines, our airmen, and our guardians are paid on time and receive the pay raise they so rightfully deserve. A yes vote on this rule enables us to consider legislation that protects working families, seniors, and small businesses in the District of Columbia by allowing the House to address actions that deny them the benefits of historic tax relief enacted by Congress. A yes vote on this rule enables us to consider legislation that strengthens America's economic and national security by advancing domestic mineral production, something we didn't talk about enough today, which reduces our reliance on foreign sources and supports job creation here at home. And finally, a yes vote on this rule enables us to consider legislation that preserves equal debate, protects the rights of the minority, and allows members on both sides of the aisle to fully participate in the legislative process. Mr. Speaker, this rule allows the House of Representatives to govern and to deliver on the responsibilities entrusted to us. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this rule. Mr. Speaker, I hope those watching enjoyed our lively debate with the gentleman from Massachusetts and his colleagues. Although for any families watching, I hope they edited out the gentleman's foul language and taking the name of the Lord in vain. But let's see which arguments prevail because we're about to vote. So, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time and move the previous question on the resolution.
Gentleman yields. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker,
Gentleman is recognized.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Gentleman recognized. Ask for the yeas and nays. The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings of the question will be postponed. Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess for a period of 15 minutes. Less than 15 minutes.
House will be in order. Proceedings will resume on questions previously postponed. Votes will be taken in the following order. Ordering the previous question on House Resolution 1032 and adoption of House Resolution 1032 if ordered. The first electronic vote will be conducted as a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, remaining electronic votes will be conducted as 5-minute votes. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on ordering the previous question on House Resolution 1032, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Resolution 1032, resolution providing for consideration of the Senate amendments to the bill H.R. 7148, making further consolidated appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes, providing for consideration of the joint resolution, House Joint Resolution 142, disapproving the action of the District of Columbia Council and approving the D.C. Income and Franchise Tax Conformity and Revision Temporary Amendments Act of 2025, and providing for consideration of the bill H.R. 4090 to codify certain provisions of certain executive orders relating to domestic mining and hard rock mineral resources and for other purposes.
The question is on ordering the previous question. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote. vote. The yeas are 212 and the nays are 210. The previous question is ordered. The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Ask for a recorded vote.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise, a sufficient number having risen. A recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 217 and the nays are 215. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Very pleasure to see you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 1032, I call up the bill H.R. 7148, the Consolidated Appropriations Act 2026, with the Senate amendments thereto, and I have a motion at the desk.
The clerk will report the title of the bill, designate the Senate amendments, and report the motion.
H.R. 7148, an act making further consolidated appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes. Senate amendments. Mr. Cole of Oklahoma moves to concur in the Senate amendments to H.R. 7148.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1032, the motion shall be debatable for 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Appropriations or their respective designees. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Cole, and the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Oklahoma.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the measure under consideration.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time that I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The House has done a tremendous job these last few months as we've finalized true bipartisan bicameral bills to fully fund our government in a member-driven, district-focused way. 6 of those bills have been signed into law by President Trump, fully funding those departments and agencies through the end of the fiscal year. While the remaining 6 bills have all passed the House, we're dealing with a partial government shutdown that could have and should have been avoided. Funding the government is not an optional exercise. It's the most basic duty we have in Congress. 2 weeks ago, the House and the Senate struck a bipartisan and bicameral deal to move forward on these remaining appropriations bills for fiscal year 2026. The House acted expeditiously to pass these bills, marking historic progress for our appropriations process and the return to regular order that every member of this chamber wants to see. I share the frustrations of many that the Senate altered our deal at the last minute. But our obligation is not to these emotions, it's to the American people. While we all worked hard, especially our Cardinals, to ensure that all 12 bills would be signed into law before the January 30th deadline, the Senate has put us on a different path. The best choice before us
is to pass these 5 bills and the short-term stopgap for the Department of Homeland Security. This approach delivers full-year funding to more than 95% of the government and avoids the consequence of inaction. To continue the government shutdown would be to repeat all the same mistakes my friends across the aisle made in October of last year, throwing federal employees into chaos and confusion while they are forced to work without pay, wreaking havoc on our airports while TSA and FFA are unfunded, putting undue stress on our military families, and causing further instability to the United States economy. Shutdowns are never the answer. They don't work. They only hurt the American people. So today, lawmakers in this chamber have an opportunity to avoid repeating past mistakes. I encourage everyone on both sides of the aisle to do the right thing and close out 5 of our remaining 6 appropriations bills for FY 2026 while enacting funding for core priorities, including strengthening America's defense and providing a well-earned pay raise to our troops, advancing life-saving biomedical research and critical education programs, enhancing the safety and reliability of our skies and infrastructure, supporting small businesses and strengthening cybersecurity, restoring American deterrence on the world stage, and reinforcing economic and community strength across the country. The package also includes a 2-week continuing resolution for our 6th and final bill, the Department of Homeland Security, which will give the White House additional time for negotiations. President Trump is leading by example and engaging directly with Democrats in good faith conversations on that front. He's also been explicitly clear that holding the government hostage is wrong. I wholeheartedly agree with him. As he stated just yesterday, and I quote, "We need to get the government open, and I hope all Republicans and Democrats will join me in supporting this bill and send it to my desk without delay." So I say to this chamber, let's get it done. The American people deserve stability, and they expect results. These bills deliver both. For anyone consulting their conscience, these measures have already passed the House with strong bipartisan support. The work has been carried out, and the responsibility now is to get it across the finish line. This vote is about governing responsibly and doing our jobs. I look forward to us nearing the completion of our FY 26 duties, and I urge all members to support this bipartisan package. Madam Speaker, with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
There are 2 paths before us today. One, if this bill passes, another, if it fails. If we take the first path, if the bill passes, here is what will happen. The Departments of Defense, Labor, Health and Human Services and Education, State, Treasury, Transportation, and Housing and Urban Development will be fully funded through the end of September. The Democratic wins we secured in this bill will be locked in. We will reject $163 billion in cuts to public services proposed by President Trump. We will increase funding for the National Institutes of Health Biomedical Research by $415 million, and we will provide over $66 billion for rental assistance programs. We turned back in the labor HHS bill 47 programs that the administration had slotted for elimination. In the housing, transportation and housing urban development, 24 programs were slotted for elimination. We reversed that. We will increase funding for child care and Head Start by $170 million, secure an additional $5.5 billion for humanitarian assistance, and boost funding for federal public defenders by $315 million. We will establish meaningful constraints on the Trump administration's ability to abuse the budget process, take expansive power over federal funding, federal spending away from Russ Vought, and reclaim it for the Congress. If not, the President and Russ Vought will be in charge of the funds and we will have no say. At the same time, funding for the Department of Homeland Security will continue at its current level for 10 days. And my friends, it's important to note that it is about 6 legislative days. If we do not pass another bill by next Friday, the department will shut down. Having passed the other full-year funding bills today, every other department would remain open. If we are not satisfied with where we are in those 10 days, 6 legislative days, we can withhold our votes without jeopardizing all of the important democratic priorities I just laid out and more. We will be in the strongest possible position to fight for and win the drastic changes we all know are needed to protect our communities. Judicial warrant requirements, no more detentions or deportations of United States citizens, an enforceable code of conduct, taking off the masks, putting the badges on, requiring the body cameras, real accountability for the egregious abuses we have seen. If we choose the second path, however, if this bill does not pass, none of that happens. Instead, we enter a prolonged government shutdown. Workers across broad swaths of the federal government would be furloughed, public services would be scaled back, paychecks would be missed. My Republican colleagues will only talk about those not getting paychecks, and you can hear it already. Instead of my Republican colleagues having to defend the Department of Homeland Security with what is happening across the country, lawless, reckless, out-of-control agencies marauding over our cities and towns and striking people where they work and where they live. Instead of increasing funding for the National Institutes of Health, new research grants would be frozen, interrupting efforts to treat and prevent deadly diseases. Instead of providing funding for rental assistance, payments would be delayed, and families would face the prospect of eviction. Instead of increasing funding for Head Start, Health and Human Services would be unable to issue new grants, jeopardizing access to early education for countless children across this country. Instead of reclaiming Congress's power of the purse, we would concede even more discretion to Russ Vought and the White House to abuse the budget process for their own partisan gain, which they would certainly exploit, as we have seen. And in 10 days, 6 legislative days, we would be in the same place with regard to Homeland Security that we would have been had the bill passed, except we will have lost all of the democratic priorities I have laid out. I have no illusions about ICE and for CBP. We must rein in these rogue agencies. We need to protect our communities. We need to protect the people and the children in our communities. We must have accountability for the egregious abuses we have seen. And it's understandable the rage and the fear and the outrageousness of what these activities have been all over this country. The only way we can get these things is to fight for and win them and let the public know what we are fighting for. Passing these 5 full-year funding bills today puts us in the best position to win that fight over the next 10 days, the 6 legislative days, and beyond, if need be. I strongly encourage my colleagues to support this bill today and continue to fight to protect our communities in the coming weeks. Thank you, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserved. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I yield 3 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, my very good friend, the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Womack.
For how much time is the gentleman? 3 minutes. The
3
gentleman
minutes.
from Arkansas is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the consolidated appropriations package before the House today. Passage of this legislation means that Congress will have provided full-year funding to more than 90% of the federal government. And it marks an important departure from the unfortunate norm in which Congress too often fails to meet its Article 1 responsibility. There are many highlights worth noting in this package. In providing for the common defense, the legislation strategically increases funding to ensure that our military continues to be the most lethal in the world, while also ensuring that our allies have the tools they need to help us defend democracy. The package also makes investments in biomedical research and small business development. Together, these measures and more support a more prosperous America. Madam Speaker, I chair the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Subcommittee. My division of this legislation cuts back unfocused spending and reduces bureaucratic bloat. Before I get into specifics, let me just thank my subcommittee ranking member, Jim Clyburn, for his partnership. He's been a great friend, and he's been an invaluable asset and partner through this process, and I appreciate his dedication to crafting this division of the bill and advancing the entire package. The THUD division invests in what matters to the American people: economic growth, safe and efficient mobility, and housing affordability. We prioritize safety by allocating over $22 billion for the Federal Aviation Administration. These dollars will fully fund air traffic control operations and enable the hiring of 2,500 new controllers. It'll jumpstart the modernization of outdated facilities and equipment, strengthening the safety and reliability of our national airspace system. We provide more than $64 billion for highways, taking care to send the overwhelming majority of these dollars back to the states, because it's at the state level where the best decisions are made, not here in Washington. We also provide funding to address our nation's shortage of safe and available truck parking. America's truckers work tirelessly to keep our grocery stores stocked, our packages delivered, and our supply chains moving. Ensuring they have a safe place to park between long drives is common sense, and this bill delivers on that promise. At the same time, we preserve housing assistance for the most vulnerable, such as youth aging out of our nation's foster care system, while promoting affordability through flexible, locally driven programs that allow communities to expand housing supply without the micromanagement of the federal government. It does all these things while saving millions of hard-earned American taxpayer dollars. I want to thank my subcommittee staff, Avery, Andrew, Doug, Mary Beth. Your hard work and diligence has been indispensable throughout this process, and know that I'm deeply grateful to have each one of you on my team.
An additional 30 seconds, Madam Speaker.
So I'm going to take that 30 seconds and brag on this guy right here, Tom Cole. He has re-engineered, somewhat reinvented, a lost appropriations process, and I am eternally grateful, and I know I speak for the American people in thanking Mr. Cole for his leadership. I want to thank my colleagues for this bipartisanship that's been exhibited by this package. And a yes vote today takes us one step closer to restoring the confidence that the American people should have in this Congress. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Maryland, the distinguished ranking member of the Financial Services and General Government Subcommittee, Mr. Hoyer.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee for yielding, and I thank the Speaker. There are 5 of these bills who are not controversial, or I suppose which are not controversial. I urge my colleagues to vote for them, to keep the government operating, to make sure that our federal employees come to work and do their job for the American people and get paid for it. There is one bill in this package that is very controversial. There is one bill in this package that the overwhelming majority of our side thinks should not be in the bill. But I remind my colleagues that bill is funded for the next 10 days or 6 legislative days. And during that period of time, we intend to raise very substantial concerns about the operations that are being carried out not only in Minneapolis but in other parts of our country by the Immigration, Customs, and Border Patrol agents. The Constitution calls upon us to establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility. Many of my colleagues, I know, believe that voting against this bill will make a strong statement about the conduct that we see being carried out by the agencies I just mentioned. Let me suggest to them we need to have focus on that issue, because the other 5 issues that we face, the 5 appropriation bills have yet to been signed by the President of the United States and will fund about 76% of the government, are things that we have agreed upon. After they pass, after they're signed by the President, there will be a lot of time to debate the operations of Homeland Security. And in my view, the laws that they are breaking, the Constitution that they are not respecting, and the human rights that they are undermining. There will be time for that debate. There will be time for that action. Today is a time to fund the majority of government for the American people. Minneapolis has shocked the conscience of America. We ought to be shocked, angry, and disgusted by the taking of life of Renee Good and Alex Preddy. We the people want to end this violent occupation of our cities. We the people deserve answers. The Congress needs to rein in the Department of Homeland Security. That's why I voted, and so many of my colleagues voted against funding the Department of Homeland Security. Not because we don't need Homeland Security, we do, but we need it done within the context of the Constitution and the laws of this country and of our states. This Congress needs to ensure the federal government can continue to provide vital services to the American people. Voting for this bill does that. And voting for this bill also gives us the opportunity to constrain 6 months, 6 days essentially of funding for the Department of Homeland Security. Unfortunately, out of the regular order, they're funded for the balance of the year in many respects. So this compromise bill serves the interest of funding our government for the American people and giving us the opportunity to constrain and to ensure that there are meaningful, substantive, substantial reforms and restraints placed upon the operations of the Department of Homeland Security, as it must be. It is essential that we unmask Trump's federal immigration agents, force them to abide by the local law enforcement standards for use of force, and use warrants.
I yield the gentleman another minute.
The gentleman's recognized for 1 more minute.
Throughout this year's appropriations process, we have seen Donald Trump and Russell Vought trample on this Congress's power of the purse. Some will admit that, some will say it silently. If there were ever a time for this Congress to exercise that power, it is now. So let us pass 5 bills on which we have agreement, substantially restrain and stop the funding of DHS a week from this Friday, and then come to an agreement on honoring the Constitution, the laws of this country, and the conduct of law enforcement. Let's pass this bill and then focus on that which the country wants us to focus on like a laser for them, for the people. I yield back my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from Connecticut reserves. The gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to my very good friend and the distinguished chairman of the Labor, Health and Human Services and Education Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee, the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Adderholt.
The gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today, as my colleagues are, in support of FY26 appropriations package, which, as it's been said, provides the full year funds for 5 out of the remaining 6 appropriation bills. Unfortunately, funding these bills is not an optional thing. It's a part of our constitutional requirement, and we must act on our commitment to the American people. With this bill that is before us today, the government will continue operating effectively and provide stability for the American people. The path forward in this legislation reflects President Trump's negotiations and direction to avoid a long-term partial shutdown and keep the government operating without further disruptions. As chairman of the Labor, Health and Human Services and Education Related Agencies Subcommittee, I'm honored to work with the ranking member of this subcommittee, Ms. DeLauro, who also serves as ranking member of the full committee, in making sure that what we do in this legislation provide funding for critical projects that provide support and for jobs for local growth in our districts. The Labor, Health and Human Services bill on the floor today balances the need for responsible fiscal stewardship while maintaining key investments in biomedical research, schools, and in public health. Thanks to the negotiations on a bicameral, bipartisan level, funding decisions have moved through a deliberative, member-driven process that emphasizes transparency, accountability, as well as timely consideration. The Labor H bill before us demonstrates the will of the American people who want new priorities and accountability in government, including priorities to make America healthy again and make America skilled again. Investments in this bill are directed to where they matter most, into life-saving biomedical research and resilient medical supply chains, classrooms and training that prepare the next generation for success, and rural hospitals and primary care to end chronic disease epidemic. These measures are part of an agreement that keeps the FY26 spending levels below the spending that was projected under the current continuing resolution, which delivers real savings for the American taxpayers. Enactment and passage of a full-year appropriation is vital. In conclusion, I want to thank the staff on both sides of the majority and the minority for all their hard work in getting this bill across the finish line. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, I urge my colleagues to support the underlying bill, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Oklahoma reserves. The gentlewoman from Connecticut is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from South Carolina, the distinguished ranking member of the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Subcommittee, Mr. Clyburn.
Gentleman from South Carolina is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I thank the gentlelady for yielding me the time. Madam Chair, I rise as ranking member of the Transportation and Housing Appropriations Subcommittee in strong support of this bipartisan legislation in large measure because it freezes funding for the Department of Homeland Security at its current level, while allowing for several days, 10 to be exact, for us to continue to zero in on that segment of the legislation and hopefully reach a bipartisan agreement. But we have already reached bipartisan agreements on 5 other sections. And one of those in this bill includes $113 billion in discretionary spending for transportation and housing programs and reflects a renewed commitment to addressing the affordability crisis and improving the safety of our transportation systems. For housing, the bill prevents the eviction of more than 4 million low-income households served through HUD's rental assistance programs, including those currently served by Section 8 and public housing. The bill reinforces efforts to combat homelessness by increasing funding for homeless assistance grants by $366 million. It protects investments for mayors